Okay, we've all been there, right? Someone's telling you to let go of negative emotions. Like, it's as simple as just putting down a heavy bag.
Hmm.
But if it were that easy, I mean, wouldn't we all be like walking on sunshine all the time?
Right.
So today we are taking a deep dive into the Sedona Method, which claims to be a roadmap to just that. A life that is lighter, brighter, and, free from all that heavy emotional baggage.
It's a big promise for sure. While it's not a magic bullet, the Sedona Method has definitely resonated with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the principles behind it, they tap into some really fascinating aspects of emotional processing.
And I'm seeing that reflected, in the research you've gathered for this. This isn't just some, fringe idea. People are buzzing about it.
Yeah, it's true.
So for those who are maybe new to the game, break it down. What's the core concept here?
Well, at its heart, the Sedona Method basically proposes that our natural state, like as humans, is actually one of peace and happiness.
Okay.
It's the emotional gunk we kind of accumulate over time that blocks us from experiencing that, that inherent joy consistently.
So it's like we're all carrying around these invisible suitcases full of emotional baggage.
Yeah.
No wonder we're tired.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the Sedona Method basically provides you with very specific techniques that are designed to help you unpack that baggage, identify those feelings, oftentimes they're subconscious, right? And most importantly, release them.
Okay, I'm hooked.
Good.
Let's unpack this letting go bit, because I think that's where most of us really stumble. How does the Sedona Method approach actually releasing those negative emotions?
So it kind of boils down to three primary techniques.
Okay.
Choosing to let go of the emotion, welcoming the emotion, or diving deeper into the emotion.
Yeah.
Each one kind of offers a different approach depending on, the type and the intensity of the feeling you're dealing with.
It's like having different tools in your emotional toolbox.
Exactly.
So let's start with the first one, letting go. How does that work exactly?
So with letting go, step one is surprisingly simple, but it's often overlooked.
Okay.
And that's to clearly identify what you're actually feeling.
Okay.
Don't just settle for, I'm stressed.
Yeah.
Get specific. Like, are you anxious? Are you frustrated? Are you jealous? Naming the emotion is actually the first step in taming it, in a way.
There's power in naming things, right?
There is, yeah.
It's like once you label it, that big, scary feeling kind of loses a little bit of its power.
You got it. And then comes the active letting go part. And the Sedona Method uses a series of questions to guide you through this. So, could I let this feeling go?
Okay.
Would I let this feeling go?
Okay.
And then when?
Now, I caught something interesting in this Well-Good article you included. And they said even if you answer no to those first couple questions, that's totally okay.
Yeah.
That feels a little counterintuitive to me.
It is, but it's all about honesty and willingness. Forcing yourself to feel something that you're not ready to feel is actually counterproductive. The questions are designed to really just shift your perspective. By asking, would I rather keep holding on to this feeling or be free from it? You begin to create that space for change.
So it's not about denying that the feeling exists. It's just about making a conscious choice about whether or not you actually want to keep carrying it.
Exactly. And that last question, when, seems almost too obvious, but it's powerful.
Yeah.
The implied answer is always now. Why hold on to something any longer than you have to?
That's a powerful reframe. But let's get practical, right? So say you've gone through the questions, you've made the choice to let go. How do you actually do it? What's the next step?
Visualizing the release can be really helpful. The Well-Good article actually has some great examples, like picturing the emotion as a dark cloud that's slowly dissipating, or imagining yourself like physically shaking off the negative energy.
Oh, I can see how that would help. It's giving that abstract feeling a concrete form that you can actually interact with.
Yeah. It's a way to really engage your senses in the process. And sometimes, honestly, simply making the decision is enough. I'm done carrying this, I'm putting it down. That internal shift in mindset can be surprisingly potent.
That makes sense for letting go, but the next technique, welcoming, that feels almost like paradoxical to me. Why would you welcome a negative emotion?
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But think of it this way. Oftentimes, the more we resist a feeling, the stronger it actually becomes.
Oh, interesting.
This technique involves dropping the resistance, acknowledging the emotion without judgment, and just allowing yourself to fully feel it.
So not trying to talk yourself out of it or push it down, just be with it.
Precisely. Remember that movie Inside Out?
Yeah.
It's like giving that emotion a seat at the table, recognizing its presence without letting it take over the entire house.
That's a great analogy. And there's even like science to back that up, right? I read that accepting your emotions rather than judging them is linked to better mental health overall.
Absolutely. When we try to suppress or deny our emotions, they tend to resurface later, often stronger than before. Welcoming is about creating space for those feelings to exist so they can eventually lose their charge.
That's really interesting. So we've got letting go, we've got welcoming, which brings us to diving deeper. When would you use this technique?
This one's particularly powerful for like deep-seated, intense emotions that just feel really tangled up with, other experiences or maybe even like patterns in your life, the kind that maybe keep you up at night, replaying scenarios in your head over and over again.
Been there. What does diving deeper look like in practice?
It's about asking those probing questions. What story am I telling myself about this situation? What's at the root of this feeling? Is there something deeper going on here?
So less about making the feeling vanish and more about understanding its origins, like being an emotional archaeologist, carefully excavating to see what lies beneath the surface.
Exactly. The Well Good article suggests some really powerful questions like, what's the core of this feeling? Or could I allow myself to dive deeper into it? It's about getting to the heart of the matter, not just addressing the surface level symptoms.
So by understanding the root, the answer, the release, it becomes clearer.
Often, yes. And this is where I think the Sedona Method book adds another really important layer, introducing the concepts of the 4 basic wants and the 9 emotional states.
Now we're talking. Those sound like the cheat codes to understanding our inner worlds. Tell me more. Okay, so we've got these intriguing tools to use for identifying and then actually releasing all this emotional baggage.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about the bigger picture, right? You're saying this isn't just about feeling calmer in the moment, but there are actual ripple effects to this.
Absolutely. Think of it this way. When you release those old patterns, those ways of reacting to things, it's like you're clearing a path for new, healthier ways of being to emerge. And that can honestly impact all areas of your life.
Okay, yeah, paint me a picture. How does this translate into, say, a better relationship or even a more fulfilling career?
Okay, let's take relationships.
Okay.
A lot of us, we carry around past hurts, resentments, maybe even fears of rejection. That then color how we interact with our partners, right?
Yeah.
So the Sedona Method, by helping you actually process and release those feelings, it creates space for clearer communication, deeper connection.
Because you're not viewing your current relationship through the lens of all that past baggage.
Exactly. You're more present. You're more able to respond to your partner authentically.
Right.
Rather than just reacting from a place of old wounds.
It's interesting.
And then in a professional context, imagine feeling less anxious about those big presentations.
Oh, yeah.
Feeling more confident voicing your ideas in meetings.
Yeah.
That can lead to better performance.
Yeah.
Taking on leadership roles that you might have shied away from before.
Not to mention just feeling more comfortable in your own skin, which I imagine changes how you show up in every aspect of life.
Absolutely. And here's where I think it gets really fascinating. The Sedona Method isn't just about getting rid of the bad stuff.
Okay.
It's also about reconnecting with that innate peace and happiness that's always been there, underneath the surface.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about decluttering, it's about rediscovering those hidden gems within ourselves that maybe we've just, forgotten about a little bit.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And those gems, they might look like, a surge in creativity.
Okay.
A deeper capacity for intimacy.
Yeah.
A renewed sense of purpose. Things that kind of blossom when we're not so weighed down by all that negativity.
It's like those heavy emotions take up so much space that there's less room for the good stuff to actually flourish.
Precisely. That's, I think, what I find so compelling about the Sedona Method. It's not just about fixing what's wrong. It's about really tapping into a deeper well of well-being.
Yeah.
That can then transform your experience on multiple levels.
Now, this whole idea of emotional release makes me think of, other things that are out there. Mindfulness, meditation, even things like EFT, emotional freedom technique. Where does the Sedona Method kind of fit in with all of that? Are there any parallels?
That's a great observation because there are definitely some overlaps. Mindfulness, for example, encourages observing thoughts and feelings without judgment, which really aligns with the Sedona Method's welcoming technique.
Yeah. So both kind of emphasize creating space for your emotions rather than trying to, make them disappear.
Yeah. Exactly. And then meditation, particularly practices that are focused on letting go of attachments, they share that similar goal of releasing rather than clinging.
Okay. What about EFT with its, like, tapping on pressure points? That seems completely different.
It does on the surface, right?
Yeah.
But at its core, EFT is also about consciously shifting your energy around a specific feeling or issue.
So different methods, but potentially tapping into similar mechanisms for actually creating change.
Exactly. I kind of see the Sedona Method as another valuable tool in the emotional toolbox alongside these other practices. What's unique, I think, is its emphasis on those very pointed questions, that active process of choosing to release.
So it's less about passively observing or redirecting energy and more about actively engaging with the emotion and making a conscious choice to let it go.
You got it. It's about empowering individuals to really take control of their inner landscape rather than feeling like they're just at the mercy of their emotions.
I like that. Taking the reins, becoming the driver of your own emotional bus, so to speak.
Exactly. Now, we've talked a lot about the potential benefits of this approach,
Right.
but I'm sure some listeners are wondering about the long game, right? Does the Sedona Method actually create lasting change, or is it more of a, quick fix?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Does this have staying power?
That's where, honestly, those clinical studies we mentioned earlier, I think would be incredibly valuable to really answer that definitively.
So we don't have a ton of hard data yet on whether people who use the Sedona Method experience long-term benefits compared to those who don't.
Not yet. However, based on what we know about neuroplasticity, the brain's amazing ability to actually rewire itself, it makes sense that consistently practicing these techniques could lead to lasting shifts in emotional patterns.
It's like building a muscle. The more you practice emotional regulation and conscious releasing, the stronger those neural pathways become.
Precisely. And that's where I think those anecdotal accounts we discussed become so compelling.
Okay.
We hear from people who say the Sedona Method didn't just help them feel better temporarily, it actually changed how they approached challenges, like their whole outlook on life shifted.
So it's not just about putting a Band-Aid on a wound, it's about allowing the wound to truly heal.
That's a great way to put it. It's about creating a shift from symptom management to actually addressing the root cause of emotional suffering.
About equipping people with the tools, the skills to navigate life's ups and downs with more resilience, more peace, more self-awareness.
Exactly. And ultimately, isn't that what most of us are searching for? A way to live more fully, more authentically, with greater freedom from the weight of all that emotional baggage.
Beautifully said. So for our listeners who are intrigued by all of this, maybe even a little curious about, dipping their toes into the Sedona Method waters, where do they go from here? What are the first steps?
That's a great transition because we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
But I'm sure some people are ready to put this knowledge into action.
All right, listeners, so we're back and ready to get practical. For those of you thinking, sign me up for a lighter emotional load, where's the starting line?
So the good news is there are actually several paths you can take.
Yeah.
The most well-known is probably the book itself, The Sedona Method by Hale Druskin.
Right.
It walks you through the whole process
Okay.
in I think, a very clear step-by-step way.
So that's the official user manual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And from what I've gathered, it's written in a very accessible style, even for those who are new to this kind of, self-help approach. But there are other options too, if you're maybe more of a hands-on learner.
Right. And I came across online courses, even retreats for those who really want to immerse themselves in the practice.
Which makes sense given what we've been discussing, right?
Yeah.
This is an ongoing practice. It's not a one-time fix.
Yeah.
So having that structured support can be incredibly valuable.
The difference between trying to learn a new language from a book versus having a teacher and classmates to guide you.
A perfect analogy.
All
And
right.
speaking of guidance, I was really intrigued to find out that they also have certified Sedona Method coaches.
Oh, wow. So you can actually work with someone one-on-one.
Exactly.
Okay.
I imagine that could be incredibly powerful, having a trained professional there to help you navigate those particularly challenging emotions or those moments when you're feeling stuck, you hit a roadblock.
Yeah. It's like having a personal trainer, but for your emotional well-being.
Yes.
Someone to cheer you on, keep you accountable.
I love that. So plenty of options, I think, depending on, your learning style and how deeply you actually want to dive in.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. For anyone listening who's maybe still feeling a little, skeptical, what would you say to them?
I actually think skepticism is healthy. It's good to approach any new technique, really, with a critical mind and a discerning eye. But here's what I would offer for consideration. What if there really is a way to let go of those deeply ingrained patterns? The anger, the fear, the sadness that are weighing us down.
Yeah. What if, like, a lighter, freer version of ourselves is actually within reach?
Exactly.
Right.
And, even if the Sedona Method itself isn't the perfect fit for everyone, even if it simply sparks a curiosity about, like, exploring our own emotional patterns more deeply, that's a step in the right direction.
Because self-awareness is always the first step, right?
Always. And I think that's the perfect note to leave our listeners with today. Whether you're ready to jump headfirst into the Sedona Method or just starting to explore the idea of, emotional release in general, I hope this deep dive has provided some valuable tools and insights to carry with you on your journey.
And maybe sparked a few new questions as well. Because sometimes the most transformative adventures begin with a single question.
Beautifully said. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and just keep diving deeper into that endlessly fascinating world within and all around you.
And on that note, this has been The Deep Dive.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.